Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick.
And this is the less hairy Justin.
Right, it's time for us to talk about some Star Wars media because we're both like 30-something-year-olds.
Yeah.
There are a lot of extracurricular Star Wars content, like your Rebels, your Resistance, all that kind of stuff, and that's all great.
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars too, absolutely.
Can't forget Clone Wars coming out again.
Absolutely. And Resistance is what, just come out? Series 2, whatever?
Series 2, yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm talking about it in another episode.
Indeed, we'll get onto that one soon. But for the time being, we're going to have a chat about The Mandalorian because all of that's great. But for us, there hasn't really been stuff made for our demographic and upwards. It's mainly been kids' content, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. Getting kids into Star Wars, I have no complaints about whatsoever. And, I love Rebels. There's a lot of really cool content, lots of really cool characters in the story, but we do have to face the fact, and a lot of moments within those episodes, this is a kid's show, and we sort of have to go, okay, this is the kiddie stuff, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Now we have a show for us.
Yes. And
just for us.
So far, not really been a bad part.
No, it's been fantastic.
It's just solid all the way through.
That's right. It is a true spaghetti western. The original Star Wars movies were like spaghetti western sort of fantasy movies. This is
also a bit of samurai.
Yep, absolutely. Where this is just hardcore down the line spaghetti western.
Yeah. No, that was interesting as well. We learned the difference between western and spaghetti western.
Yes, indeed. In our research for this episode, you mentioned the spaghetti western is more violent in general. You have the character, the man with no name, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rolling into town, fighting the monster of the week kind of thing, which is something that's carried on into sort of later styles of shows. But yeah, this is even more gone in that direction than even the original Star Wars movies.
Yeah, so it's basically the original thing, but more of it.
Indeed.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
A New Hope is basically a fantasy story. In fact, if we look at medieval, magic and dragons, that kind of stuff, you've got your wizard, you've got your apprentice, you've got your rogue, you've got your warrior. They go on a quest to save a princess.
It is D&D.
That is the OG Star Wars narrative, and it's sort of mixed with Western elements, where this is more hardcore into that sort of really rugged, roguish character. But interestingly enough, it doesn't go for the anti-hero approach. It goes for the true hero approach.
And I'm glad that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely, which I really love. It's more, I guess, akin to a samurai kind of character in that regard.
Yeah.
It's not so much like the rogue gunslinger who, kills everyone and then walks off in the sunset.
Shoots first, asks questions later. No, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
There's some real heart to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I really, really love. Before we get any further, I'm just going to say that we are going to make the first probably 10 minutes of this spoiler-free. I will make sure, on the screen, there'll be spoilers. So
big flashing lights.
Absolutely, as best I can do in post. Just so if any of you haven't seen it, you can sit here for the next 10 minutes, have a bit of a chat with us, talk in the comment section. Well, maybe the comment section might have spoilers in it. I can't guarantee that it won't. But for those of you who are unsure, on the fence, well, first of all, watch it. There's no question.
You need to watch it. It is...
If I was going to recommend Resistance or Rebels, well, I'd say, watch it if you like this, this, and this. Resistance, look.
Resistance is, except for some of the new episodes that have just recently come out, you can skip them.
There are caveats. Caveats. If you're a fan of Star Wars, watch The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I'd say, warning for kids, but it's not that bad, really.
Young kids.
Yeah, I suppose. But look, if they've watched the Star Wars movies, there's not really any greater degree of violence. There's
No, I reckon there is.
I suppose there's some
episode.
Some of the stealth kills. Yeah. Some of those.
No, I think it is more sort of an M rating than
a bit more. But look, kids these days grow up so fast.
Well, look, let's put it this way. My son's not seeing it until he's a bit older.
Yeah, that's probably fair enough. But yeah, it is that true spaghetti western. It's about having that character that's just really mysterious, and we're into 4 episodes now, and we're sort of learning a little bit more as it goes on, which is...
We're halfway through this season, which is...
Well, it's 9 episodes in total, or 8? They're going to do 8 in total. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, we're halfway through, and the first 3 episodes is the establishing arc that basically informs what the entire season is going to be about. After episode 3, it's you know what the whole conflict of the rest of the season is going to be. Well, the overarching conflict.
Yeah.
Episode 4 is really what I would describe as a monster of the week kind of episode.
Yeah, it's a take a second to rest and get the next arc set
He goes to this planet, faces this issue, whatever, challenge, and at the end he's off to the next thing. It's so spaghetti western.
Yeah.
It's right. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second when we get to spoilers. But yeah, look, in terms of what this represents within the Star Wars universe, this is all these lovely, lovely callbacks. And before we get into spoilers, I do want to mention this because this is something that has been done clumsily in other Star Wars IPs. I look specifically at a movie like Solo, and I like Solo, but I think it misses the mark on several different aspects. You might disagree with me, but...
See, I'm a massive fan of Childish Gambino.
Absolutely.
And
oh, no.
Donald Glover.
I think the way it's a character-driven story is one of the better parts of Solo. I love that it's a small story, kind of like The Mandalorian. But one of the things I felt was really weak in the Solo movie was the way it calls back to other things. It's very heavy-handed.
It is very on the nose. It's, ooh, do you remember this character? We just talked about this character.
Remember this? Remember this?
Yeah.
Like nudging you really hard, square in the ribs.
Well, what was it? It's just like, oh, should we be talking to Bosk? And you're like, oh.
It's like when they name-dropped Teras Kasi of all things.
Yeah, that was a bit ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's that sort of karate style that Kira was doing. For those of you who don't know, Teras Kasi was a video game back from the 90s.
Yeah, wasn't it meant to be like anti-Jedi Kung Fu or something?
Sort of like that. It was basically a clone of Virtua Fighter. Pretty bad game. I loved it when I was a kid. Don't get me wrong, everyone. For those of you, all three of you that played Masters of Teras Kasi or what it was called. But just like, really overt on-the-nose references. Like, one of the things that I thought the second Solo finished was they did not need to add the scene in the end where he won the Falcon. I would have been content if that wasn't in there.
Well, I think...
Because we know it happens. You don't need to visibly show it.
Well, at the time, there was talk of them actually doing 3 Solo films at the time or something like that, which was ridiculous.
Yeah, wow, they really took a back step off that, didn't they? Yeah,
but like, if they had done that, don't do that last scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, that can be in the second or even the third movie.
Absolutely.
And I feel like they got to a point where they're like, oh, we're not going to show
I like where they ended it. If anything, they could have given away less. But look, we're getting on a tangent here. That's Solo. Talking about the way this references specifically the original trilogy, it's very strong. Lots of little subtle sound effects. A lot of the ways it's edited is very referential.
Like the ship when he's trying to start it and it makes the same noise.
Yeah, the sputter of the Falcon sputter. Yep. There's a great shot. There's a transition in A New Hope, and I won't tell you what happens in The Mandalorian if you haven't seen it, but where basically it does this circular wipe to a wide shot of Luke and Obi-Wan in Luke's land speeder. There's almost an identical shot in The Mandalorian, and it makes it gel with the original trilogy. And this is something that Lucasfilm and before Disney took over, even George Lucas was trying so desperately to do, make the new content gel with the original trilogy. Sometimes in a very clumsy way, like putting Hayden Christensen in Return of the Jedi, changing Boba Fett's voice. It just felt really heavy-handed. I really dislike the way the original trilogy was changed. Honestly, I feel like keeping it as separate things is just fine. That's my own opinion.
It's a little bit McClunky.
Yeah, absolutely McClunky. Let's not go into that. But the way Solo does it, like, it's very nice, subtle callbacks. It's sound effects. It's editing. It's not lines of dialogue, which is just, hey, remember that?
Yeah.
Like, so overt. And I really like that. I really like. It's obvious that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are just huge Star Wars nerds, and they respect things.
Yeah,
and that's all I'll say on that. Like, we could list all the things that they reference. Let's not go into that.
No.
Let's talk a bit more. Okay, the music. Something I really want to mention because we have our John Williams-esque, main theme for The Mandalorian. But it's also very different as well. It's a very Fifth Element in the way they do things.
I was almost actually going to say, you've started playing Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes.
And that also has some very Star Wars music to it, but also its own thing as well.
It's very much its own thing. It's similar to like Rogue One in that regard, where it's not Star Wars, in other words.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, do you feel like either one of them is doing it a better way? Or
Fallen Order is more your classic Star Wars score, which is great because it's a Jedi story, so whatever. It's, Jedis and Inquisitors, blah, blah, blah. It's very classic. The Mandalorian is not. Mandalorian is a very unique story. I bring up The Fifth Element because if you've ever seen this old film with Bruce Willis, and
it is a classic.
It's so good. This great old sci-fi movie. It's really hard to describe, so I'm not going to start to describe it, but it has this really sort of futuristic sci-fi music, like really pushes the envelope. And there are orchestral elements to it, but it just feels like there's not a lot more heart. It's hard to describe, but it suits a smaller story. It suits the gunslinger in the West.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good way to
It's
put it.
not about armies and that kind of stuff. And, without spoiling any more, talking more about like genre and stuff, it's more electronic and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, this is a YouTube video and I've got to monetize this, so I can't show you any of the music. But it's really, really beautiful. And it really sort of talks to this character.
He just starts off as a character where you're just like, ooh, could he do this? Could he do that? And he slowly sort of shows himself.
It's the decision and the direction the episodes go in, which, again, we'll talk about in a second. But you mentioned, like, samurai movies. Like, he is a samurai. The Mandalorian's a samurai, and it's fantastic. There's almost that conflict between being a bounty hunter and being a samurai, or rather being a bounty hunter, being a Mandalorian. That's built into it, which is...
That was the third episode, wasn't it? Where... but we won't go into spoilers.
They sort of introduce those elements slowly. Again, we'll talk about that slowly. And one more thing before we go into spoilers, the show length. It's half-hour episodes.
Yeah. Now,
we disagree on this.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I want more. And actually... In the fourth episode, it was, I think...
Game of Thrones fan.
Yeah. It was actually closer to 36 minutes. And I'm like, oh, actually, that was pretty good. But I think that was also a very different episode to the first three. And the first three, I was just like, I want a bit more story. I want it more fleshed out. But at the same time, everything was so sharp and direct and...
Polished.
And you didn't need any more.
Yes.
It's just that I'm... greedy and I'd like more.
I know, but that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, and in no way am I saying it's a bad thing. There's one little thing that I would like, which is to have the planet names, and I understand why they're not doing it.
It suits the original Star Wars movie. It suits Rogue One.
Yeah.
Because they did that in Rogue One as well, because it's a military-style movie. I will say, and I'm going to reveal what a giant nerd I am right now. I love puppet shows.
You do love your Dark Crystal?
And when I was a kid, I watched like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet. Actually, the transition between those two shows, those Jerry Anderson sci-fis from the 60s, Thunderbirds was around the 1 hour mark, I think like TV 1 hour, so like 40 to 50 minutes, and Captain Scarlet was half an hour. Captain Scarlet, in my opinion, is a better show because of that. All the episodes are tighter. It gets to all the narrative points really well. Where Thunderbirds was a show that waffled on and waffled on and waffled on.
Yeah.
And because of how tight The Mandalorian is, like, I want to believe that they could write longer episodes, but I also don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I think it's more the fact that because there's only 8 episodes a season, I'd like it to be that little bit longer. Like, okay, going back to Game of Thrones, it was a longer show, except for the final seasons, and the episodes were like that hour long, and you had all this history and backstory that they'd talk about in it, and
it's also a much larger scale story.
Yeah.
That's the thing you got to remember as well. It's that classic problem that Peter Jackson has where he has to make movies that go for like over 3 hours.
Oh, don't talk to me
and that
about the goddamn Hobbit.
That was great for Lord of the Rings. It was a mistake when it comes to King Kong and The Hobbit.
Yes.
It
was a mistake to put it into 3 movies.
Yeah, let's not go into that.
No. Joel, I can talk for hours on that.
You've gone red.
I am...
yeah.
Please don't let me talk about it.
That's right, we're talking about The Mandalorian,
yes,
which is a sensible length.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think at this point in the video, we're just going to say, hey, here come the spoilers. Spoilers. All right, you gone? You gone? You haven't seen it yet? Okay, right. Let's talk about spoilers. Okay, so let's talk about some of these characters that aren't The Mandalorian and,
Maybe a tiny little green one, which is so goddamn cute, and the internet loves it.
Now, if any of you haven't watched this yet and have avoided Baby Yoda, well done.
Yeah. I don't know how you've done it.
Just some kind of a god wizard or something like that. But yes, this character is called Baby Yoda, even though Yoda is the name of the character, not the race. Yeah,
so I've been calling him the Yodeling.
I think that's fair.
Which makes kind of more sense, because you're not talking... Baby Yoda in itself sounds like it's a tiny Yoda, and you're like, well, it's not a tiny Yoda. Or could it be? I don't know.
I was watching a podcast recently. I'm Always Open, one of the Rooster Teeth podcasts, and they're all sort of semi-Star Wars fans, and then they were talking about Baby Yoda. I'm like, oh, I should watch this. I want to see Yoda as a baby. I'm like, no, this is after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And they were so angry that it wasn't actually Baby Yoda. So I think there's a good reason why we should try and avoid using the term Baby Yoda. I completely understand, like, for the newer fans, like, oh, yeah, I could see Yoda as a baby. No, this is the same race as Yoda and Yaddle. Yes.
Well, see, and here's the thing. The scientist in the show, he looks to be a cloner. He's got the same patch on his arm, which is talking about cloning from Kamino.
Yeah, so it's obviously something to do with trying to find Force users.
Yeah, so he could actually be a Baby Yoda, but we don't know.
I see what you mean, yes. That's very strange.
But if it was to be Baby Yoda, I'd actually be disappointed.
Yeah, I know what you mean. This could have some wider implications, like people are theorising that it's something to do with the origins of Snoke. Honestly, the way Jon Favreau particularly is talking about this, I don't think that's going to be the case. He obviously wants that smaller story.
Yeah.
It could have wider implications, but it's not going to be the main thrust of the story. Speaking of Baby Yoda, there have been several points where Baby Yoda almost left the show.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised, like, every time. No, this is a main character. He's going to be in every episode.
But, like, this is the great thing about this show. Like, I think it was episode 3 when he drops him off.
Episode 3 is when he gets the bounty.
Yeah, and he literally drops him off, and you're like, oh. At that point,
what direction is this show going into?
One of two ways, and that was the best feeling to have.
That's it. Is he going to go the hero or anti-hero route? And he went the hero route.
Yeah.
He chose honor over the job, which is cool. As we were saying before, there's this conflict where he's a bounty hunter, but he's also a Mandalorian. And fundamentally, he's a Mandalorian first and foremost. And he's basically not a bounty hunter at this point in the show, I suppose.
Yeah.
He's still a mercenary. Like, he still gets hired for a job in the 4th episode, but he's not working for the bounty guild anymore.
Yeah, well, he didn't really even want to be...
No.
The only reason he wanted it was because it was far out of the way.
That's it, yeah. We'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But yeah, it's interesting because Baby Yoda essentially informs this entire arc, informs the entire morality of this character. We see how he's abandoned as a child, and that informs his decision when it comes to what he's going to do with this small creature. And
that and how much he hates droids.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
He is not a fan.
Absolutely. Oh, speaking of which, next character we should mention, IG-11.
Taika Waititi as a droid.
That's it.
Oh,
that's a great choice.
And he was just going to keep exploding himself.
That's right. Now, we haven't seen this character return. We're a bit up in the air about whether we think this character's going to return. I think it would be really cool. At the same time, it's Taika Waititi. Maybe they're going to get him from one episode. But he does die in the first episode.
Well, see, the way I look at it is that the IG series of droids, there's a lot of them. Yeah,
I like the idea that maybe they upload his memory into another one.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just literally repair him or something like that. But the idea there's this droid that keeps turning up and keeps helping him and keeps trying to stuff him up and blow it. Like, that character returning to annoy him over and over again would be really cool. But we're 4 episodes in and he hasn't come back yet. So, I don't know what they're going to do.
Could go either way, yeah.
But it was a really cool thing because... I mean, we're going to talk about CG in a second, but the way they interspliced real shots in with CG to make him combat combat was so good.
Turning around as it looks so robotic, but smooth and.
It was wonderful. There actually was an episode of the Clone Wars, in fact, one of the very first episodes where. A Trandoshan junker finds R2-D2 and I think Anakin sneaks onto the ship and he fights an IG.
Yeah.
He fights very similarly to that, But to make it look that good in live action, to make it look that realistic, was really, really awesome.
So nice, isn't it?
The comedy and everything, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, just him coming up and taking the little ball off the ship.
Oh, it's just wonderful. In fact, I do want to talk about this a bit more because IG-11 and Baby Yoda are both strong for many different reasons, but practical effects. I have to have a conversation about practical effects. It's something it's a drum I bang on all the time, and this is my stance. If you can do it practically, you should.
Yeah. Full
stop. End of story. I know a lot of people love Rogue One, like they consider it their most favourite Disney story, rather their favourite Disney Star Wars film. I have several issues with it, and one of the biggest criticisms I have it is the use of CG. It is just too much. I always come back to this point. Yes, Tarkin was impressive, wasn't believable, should have got an actor. Yeah. I will...
And Carrie Fisher as
well. This is the hill I will die on. I'm sorry. It's just the movement. Something about it is off, and it takes you out of the moment.
Yeah, the uncanny valley,
it was disappointing, especially after The Force Awakens, which was so heavy into practical effects. And I'm sure The Rise of Skywalker, this might date this video pretty badly, will focus on practical effects. Because again, we're talking J.J. Abrams. It's what he likes to focus on.
That and lens flares.
Yeah, that and lens flares. But the use of practical and CG in this show is exactly what I would want. It's CG when it absolutely must be. Like Baby Yoda walking is the one instance where, I get it. You can't use a puppet, but there are some amazing shots.
It's the Razor Crest flying through space, and you're like...
Yeah, just the lighting looks perfect. There's a shot of Mando and Baby Yoda making a camp on the desert planet where he finds him, and it's just Baby Yoda. Like, it's a close up of him looking out at the sunset, and it's like, it's a puppet. It's because it's a puppet. It looks so beautiful. It's just something we can't get past. Like one show that I love, and I know I keep banging on about this, the new Dark Crystal series on Netflix.
What is it? I've forgotten his name. You keep talking about him.
Hup.
You love Hup.
Hup is my favourite. Hup and Baby Yoda. It's somewhere like that. If any of you watching this, have strong opinions about practical effects, go and watch The Dark Crystal on Netflix. Treat yourself. It is incredible. And it's incredible largely because it uses mainly practical effects, a few CG shots with like animated movements of particularly very big puppets. But I'm serious. I will die on this hill. I don't care. Like, there is rarely a good excuse to use CG when practical can be done. And I think the direction that Lucas was taking, like especially the prequels towards the end, where there was basically no sets, no clone troopers, was a bad decision.
There is no clone armor. It doesn't exist.
Correct.
Which is crazy to think of.
Actually, we were curious about this because there's a shot of some super battle droids when Mando was a child. We're like, are they practical? They don't look practical.
No.
But if they were, they would be the only practical super battle droids in existence because George never made any. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Okay, we have to... Let's actually move on and talk about some weapons. This is one of the cool parts of the show as well.
Yeah, what's the disruption staff? Is it?
Yes, the tuning fork, which was the original design for Boba Fett back in the Star Wars Christmas special. Yeah. Really nice callback, that. It's a disruptor weapon, in case you guys aren't aware. Disruptor weapons are something that are illegal under both the Republic and the Empire. And they were mandated for use against the Lasats. There's this whole subplot in Rebels about that. Yes, basically, you shoot someone, they explode.
It looks really good.
It looks really, really good indeed. And a lovely, nice little callback, but the flamethrower, the whistling birds. The whistling birds, just beautiful.
How cool are the whistling birds? Just like...
It's that one weapon that gets you out of any situation, and I love that they did this classic thing that a lot of movies do, where you have to establish that this weapon is a one-off.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2, sorry guy, that's a one-off.
Yeah.
And then Mickey Rourke turns up.
You got to keep those things for the final boss.
That's right. You got to keep your best weapons for the final boss. So the whistling bird against 4 stormtroopers. I mean, in terms of what's gone on in the show so far, 4 stormtroopers have been pretty much.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe apart from the ATSD, but it wouldn't have helped against the ATSD.
No.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed, lovely little references like that. Like all the quotes, like the Jawas wanting their Suga! And the Jawas fondue party they have with the egg afterwards. I love...
Yeah.
The Jawas were a really good storytelling device because they represented something very different than what Mando was used to. They just wanted to enjoy life, trade, salvage ships.
Yeah, and he couldn't get his things that he wanted through fighting.
He couldn't punch his way out of that situation, which was really cool. It was a good learning experience.
Even then, he's trying to. He tries to light one of them on fire.
Well, he vaporizes a few of them, and they're like, "I'll still trade with you." Like, that's pretty noble of them, I gotta say.
I mean, they do try and knock him around a bit when they're driving the sandcrawler as well. But they have their fun, but in the end, they're happy to trade with him, which is
it's lovely. The way that second episode really evolves the character is lovely. The Ugnaught that
he has spoken.
He has spoken. The Mandos.
This is the way.
This is the way. There's very defining moments for these characters.
Yeah, and you just every time you hear one of these quotes, you're just like, "Oh, this is good."
It embodies the characters.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting writing device where you use like catchphrases. It seems cheap, but it's actually really powerful, and I just really, really appreciate that. We know, based on conversations from Jon Favreau and Jay Filoni, we will be seeing a character from Rebels turn up at some stage.
Yeah, now you reckon that we might have already seen it.
Well, this is interesting because we have the Mandalorians revealed without removing their helmets. I think there's a very strong chance that one of them will be Sabine.
Yeah.
The idea that the Forge Master might be Sabine. I mean, the Forge Master is a female character. She has a Death Watch helmet. She has the little maul spikes, which I don't think Sabine would wear.
No. Also, Sabine's a lot more colourful.
That's right.
Yeah, she likes to, decorate her own armour, and she already had the full Beskar steel.
That's true. But she did fundamentally change her character after Ezra left. Basically modelled her lifestyle after him. It makes perfect sense that Sabine may have gone to, help the Mandalorians in the Outer Rim, but also she would have helped the Mandalorians on Mandalore. I don't know.
Because she left with Ahsoka to try and find Ezra, didn't she?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and this is another thing people are talking about, like, is this character going to be Ahsoka? I don't think so. Again, we're focusing more on a smaller story. I don't think Ahsoka really fits into that.
I don't think a Force user in Season 1 makes sense.
Yeah, I think just easing away from the Force users just for a little bit is a nice breath of fresh air.
You do have Yoda, and he has already...
Good point, but that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. Absolutely.
I'm thinking the old favourite character of ours, Sexy Kalos.
Sexy Kalos, yes.
Sexy Kalos back there. Oh,
actually, because we don't know what happened to him during the Battle of Yavin or anything. No. Because it's just not... Yeah.
He could be flying his own ship, doing his own thing.
Like, he could have left the rebellion, they re-establish the Republic and they go, oh, this is just like the Empire, I'm going to go do my own thing. I can easily see that kind of plot line evolving for that kind of character. I would love to see Kalos as the character from Rebels. I just think it's more likely to be Sabine. And in terms of what's happened, we have that first 3-episode arc where, we establish what's going on. He saves the baby Yoda. He's no longer part of the Guild of Bounty Hunters. He's a true Mandalorian. He's got his Mando brothers to help him back up. And we've got this 4th episode now, which is basically like this classic monster of the week. Literally has a monster at the end of it, the ATST.
It's got these, markings on it, trying to make it look a bit more ferocious.
Eyes. I loved it. It's great because it really plays into that whole spaghetti western kind of narrative. It's interesting. I've seen a lot of kickback about this because people are like, oh, but we had an entire movie that proved that ATSTs are just trash. But I'm like, no, that was against a battalion of rebels and a warrior tribe of Ewoks.
Yeah.
I know they're teddy bears, but they are warriors.
They do eat people.
That's right. Absolutely. They do too. It's so weird to think about, isn't it? Yeah. Against 2 bounty hunters and a bunch of villagers. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, the other one I've seen is there was an episode in Clone Wars where these farmers actually get trained by Jedi to fight.
Yes, a very similar kind of story, isn't it?
Yeah, they're fighting, I think, bounty hunters themselves, actually.
Yep, something like that.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, that's similar, but at the same time, completely different.
Indeed. I love the way the ATST was sort of reimagined and represented. It was very beautiful.
It's just like, this is a monster. It will kill everyone.
It's a big deal. Yeah. It's a big deal when you don't have an army backing you up, basically. And that was really, really cool. I love that style of Monster of the Week thing. But at the same time, the episode ultimately was just a vehicle to, have this side narrative and didn't really evolve the main plot. So as this show keeps going, I'd like to see more of the main plot being evolved.
Yeah.
Like, basically, but the bounty hunters are still chasing Baby Yoda. Like just chucked in at the end there.
I think, though, you needed to have a bit of a break. It does happen in a lot of shows where you do have that filler episode every so often.
That's true.
As long as it's not stuff like... I used to watch a lot of anime, so like stuff like Bleach and One Piece and things like
Dragon
that.
Ball
Dragon Ball Z. Where you just
and Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you just have filler episodes. With this only being 8 episodes, I don't think they can really afford to do that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe one maximum
more.
2.
Yeah, for sure.
Filler episodes, but yeah.
But the bottom line is, it was still a strong character moment.
Yeah.
We still had our ex-Imperial shock trooper, and I've forgotten her name. That story was kind of glossed over. I'd like to see a bit more evolution on that character.
My problem with that character was also like they say Imperial shock trooper at the start, but then they start talking about rebels and the resistance, and I'm just sitting there going, wait, hang on, so where's she from? Yeah. I thought that she was part of the
we had a conversation about this before. We both watched the episode. We both can't work out where she's from, so a little bit sloppy. Hopefully we see a bit more of that character's backstory. We had yet another opportunity to get rid of Baby Yoda, and it wasn't taken, so nope, that character's staying. That character's absolutely staying. I think whatever purpose that character has with the Empire, it's going to be seen through with Mando. I think that's really what that end of the episode where they tried to assassinate him and they're like, nah, I'm holding on to him, I'm taking another planet. And that's what it's going to be about. And I like that. I like the direction the show is heading. I have no idea how it's going to finish. I have no idea if Mando's going to survive. We assume he will because they're talking about a second season right now.
Yeah.
Yes, exciting things to come, I think, is the bottom line here.
Yeah. 4 episodes down, 4 episodes to go, and I can't wait.
Absolutely. And look, just wanted to make a video where we're just gushing about this because we're just really happy. We're massive fans of Firefly, and it's good to see that sort of show make its way into an actual Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, down in the comments, what do you think of The Mandalorian? What are your favourite parts? What don't you like? Where do you think it's going to go? Let us know. Let's have a conversation down there and just make that YouTube algorithm love us. In the meantime, do not forget to like and subscribe. Like us from Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Reddit. And also Patreon. Yes, we have to bring this up.
Patreon is now having to probably become the main thing now.
For a lot of YouTube creators, because of these new child protection laws coming out in the United States, it affects everyone, international YouTubers as well. It may just simply be a case where getting ad revenue off YouTube is completely untenable. And this makes things like Patreon extra important. Even if you don't want to support us, consider supporting the other YouTubers you watch as well, because it's a pretty big deal right now.
Yeah.
It's a pretty bad thing for us to go to. I'm going to make a separate video on this if I haven't already, so we can actually have a conversation about this. But in the meantime, if you could consider supporting that, that'd be awesome. And for those of you who already have, thank you so much. And we'll catch you all in the next video.
Bye.